You remember the date, or the nomination is pushed back.
Yeah, you can make an announcement that
So push back, 2 months.
well, February, not 2 months, 2 weeks. February. Well, to March 3rd.
Okay, to March 3rd.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
but back to the next committee meeting.
Yeah.
All right. Good evening and welcome. I call to order this meeting of the Committee of Council for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Mr. Harris, can you please call the roll of members?
Yes, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Madden.
Here.
Mr. Arroyo.
Here.
Mr. Cleese.
Here.
Ms. Craig.
Here.
Ms. Diaz.
Here.
Mr. Hirsch.
Here.
And President Beke.
Council President Beke is excused this evening. A few friendly reminders. Please note this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Today's committee meeting does not have a scheduled public comment period, but councilors may invite public comment after each item on their agenda. If you are making a public comment, please do so at the microphone and state your name and address for the meeting record. Also, please be sure to silence any cell phones or devices. I'll hear a motion for the approval of the December 2nd, 2024 committee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Mr. Harris?
Mr. Madden.
Aye.
Mr. Arroyo.
Aye.
Mr. Cleese.
Aye.
Ms. Craig.
Aye.
Ms. Diaz.
Aye.
And Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
We'll start off with the Personnel Committee. Councilor Kalik.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. The Personnel Committee has 2 items on the agenda, but the first item is pushed back to the next committee meeting. And the second item is the nomination for reappointment to the City Revitalization and Improvement Zone Authority. Shelby Norman, she currently serves on the board, and she expresses her willingness to be reappointed. And I have to mention also that she was recommended by Senator Scott Martin due to her experience with the community and economic development. Are there any questions or comments from other members of the committee? From other members of council? From the public? Hearing none, so I'm gonna make a motion to move this nomination to our full council meeting.
Second.
All in favors?
Aye.
Thank you. That concludes the Personnel Committee, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Councilor Kalik. We'll go into the Finance Committee. We have 3 items on the agenda for today. We'll start off with Administration Resolution number 1225, which is amending the supplemental pension plan for the city employees. This specific item on the agenda needs to be updated, the supplemental pension plan for the city. We reviewed this a year ago and adding the firefighters to the plan at that time, but we did not update the match contribution for police according to the current collective bargaining agreement with them. The supplemental pension plan states that a match of 25%, but we have been paying 35% based on the contract. We need to update the pension plan to reflect that. I'll invite Director Campbell if there's anything additional that we need to add to the resolution.
I don't have a lot additional to add. This is to reflect the current matching contribution for police officers hired on or after January 1st, 2011. So we missed it when we updated it last year, so we are updating it now.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Any questions from the committee or full council? Any questions from the public? Great. I'll move motion to move Administration Resolution number 12, 2025 to full council, the next full council meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is Administration Resolution number 13, 2025. This is exonerating the 2024 water and sewer charges for city-owned and related properties. Typically, every year we exonerate the water and sewer charges for city-owned and related properties. This is the annual occurrence for those exonerations. I'll invite Director Campbell for any additional commentary.
Yeah, so as Councilor Arroyo already stated, this is an annual resolution. It's done because the city tracks water and sewer usage at city properties. This is mostly to detect leaks or unusual usage, but we don't bill ourselves for this usage. So the charges are exonerated annually to clear them from financial accounts. I do want to note that there's 2 properties on this list that are not city-owned, and that is the library and the fire line at the Lancaster Airport. The water and sewer service to the library is considered an in-kind contribution from the city, and the service to the airport is done in exchange for the airport providing the city use of its large capacity snow blowers in case of a major snowstorm.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Any questions or comments from the committee or full council? Any questions from the public? With that, I'll motion to move Administration Resolution Number 13, 2025 to the next full council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. The next item on the agenda is an update on the 2025 bond debt issuance, and Director Campbell will be giving that presentation.
Yes, thank you. I will try to keep this brief tonight. But just wanted to give an overview this evening. So at the March 3rd Council Committee meeting, which is next month, we'll be introducing an ordinance for a 2025 general obligation bond at that time. We'll have a detailed list of projects included in the bond in March, and Daryl Peck, who's our financial consultant from Concord Public Financial Advisors, will attend that meeting to provide details of the financing. At that meeting, we'll also look at debt repayment, potential amortization schedules, and effects on the operating budget, and which some of those effects would start with some of the funds in 2026. For tonight, I want to give just an overview of the bond and a very high-level idea of the projects that will be included in the bond. All of these projects come directly from the 30-year capital plan that we reviewed on a couple of different occasions last November. This general obligation bond will include a proposed total of $55.3 million in debt financing. This financing is divided between 3 of the funds, so the general fund and then 2 enterprise funds, the water fund and the sewer fund. The stormwater fund and the solid waste and recycling fund are not included in the 2025 general obligation bond. So the breakdown of the financing would be as follows, and I did send Councilor Arroyo this breakdown, and I believe he sent it out just about an hour or so ago, so my apologies for the lateness on that. So there will be about $19 million from this bond that goes towards the general fund. The main buckets of projects included in this area are, I will give a few of those here, 6 of those. Resources for our parks, because the Parks and Open Space Master Plan was approved in the fall of 2024, work's now needed to implement that plan, so approximately $3.5 million of this funding will go to support that work. There will be continued implementation of the active transportation plan. So this includes, again, a few different projects, which you will see detailed out more in March, but this is approximately $1.9 million. Some of the funding will go towards the Vision Zero work. Approximately $2.7 million of the bond will be used to fund continuing work on our Vision Zero plan. About $5.9 million will go towards various right-of-way improvements. This includes continued work on South Duke Street, streetscapes on Anna Judiana, and numerous signal upgrades throughout the city. About $1.6 million would go for some ongoing maintenance to our facilities, including roof repairs for some various buildings. It will also include some upgrades to the Welcome Center that are starting now, and some other general maintenance needs. And finally, we've designated about $3.4 million toward expanding efficiencies for our operations center. We need to build a new salt shed, among other things. We have concerns that the current one won't be able to withstand the weather for much longer, and it also includes costs for upgrading storage, both for equipment and for our archives. So moving on, I'm going to actually jump to water next. There's about $17.6 million of the bond that will be designated for water. This consists of 4 main areas. The first and biggest is the water transmission main, which we have discussed a few different times. Approximately $10.5 million will be designated for this work. This is the main transmission line from the Susquehanna River. The line is currently past its useful life and requires us to replace it to ensure that the water continues to flow at the capacity that we need to serve all residents. Next is just some general water quality improvements. This category is about $3.6 million and includes a few different projects that are focused on maintaining or improving water quality. And again, those will be outlined in more detail in March. Another category is the lead service lines, replacement of those. We've discussed this numerous times as well in the past. We're currently working with some federal requirements to get the lead service lines replaced, and we've designated about $1.5 million for this work in the bond. And then finally, we're designating approximately $2 million towards design costs for the work to lower PFAS rates, which is another requirement that we've discussed in the past. And then lastly, just quickly, I'll talk through the wastewater fund. So that is about $18.7 million of this bond, and that is what's designated for wastewater or sewer. There's 6 main categories of projects that this funding will be used for. The largest portion of this funding, which is approximately $7.6 million, will be used toward work being done to separate our combined sewer systems. This is work that combines the stormwater, or that separates the stormwater runoff from sewer outfalls that are currently combined because of the infrastructure that we have in the city. And then, and that funding is actually used for 3 different sewer separation projects. We've designated about $4.7 million of the bond to be used for projects related to the long-term control plan or the consent decree. The plan should be approved by the end of this year, I believe, and we have limited time to actually implement the plan once it's approved, so this funding will go towards that. The anaerobic digester, one of the longer-term plans that the DPW team has brought to council in the past is to install an aerobic digester, which would be a more efficient use for us than the current wastewater system that we have. We don't anticipate that this will be built before 2028, so we're not including construction funding in this bond, but it will take a significant amount of design work, and so that is approximately $1.5 million of this. There is some collection system improvements, some expansion of the collection facilities and rehabilitation that we need to do. So that's approximately $3.65 million. And then 2 smaller items. One is that we are looking to purchase a camera truck. And I'm not exactly sure of all the details on that. Director Campbell might be able to help with that. But this is my understanding is it's a truck that can help us to assess all of the current conditions of our collections infrastructure, as well as help with some GPS and GIS preparations. And then we do have about $500,000 towards emergencies that would be needed in the bond. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is intended tonight as a very broad overview of the upcoming bond funding. We will have more details, both written and as a verbal report on March 3rd. You'll see a full list of projects, and we can answer any specific questions that we might not be able to answer this evening. We'll also have the opportunity to discuss this again 2 more times at council meetings when the first and second readings of the ordinances are heard in March, or potentially April, depending on the timing of the bond work and bond auction. So I welcome questions this evening, and if I don't have exact answers, I'll make sure that I follow up on March 3rd as well.
Thank you, Director Campbell. Any questions from the committee or council? Councilor Craig?
Thank you, Vice. I'd like to know a little bit more about the truck.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the other Director Campbell to come up on that one.
So thank you very much for that question. This is in aid of trying to better understand and evaluate the horizontal infrastructure. The truck allows us to less invasively identify the condition and materials of some of the wastewater infrastructure that's throughout the system without having to do what we call potholing or digging into every location in 2 or 3 locations. It's a fraction, it allows us to do that work at a fraction of the cost. We have, as you know, tens of thousands of customers, and we're trying to update the current infrastructure to have a better sense for capital planning, long-term capital planning, what is necessary, be able to plan for replacing wastewater lines before they actually break, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what this is. That's what this is about. It's not only the truck, but it's the camera equipment and some of the instrumentation that's required to be able to see underground or to less invasively excavate to be able to get the information we need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Any additional questions or comments from the committee or council? Councilor Mehta?
Thank you, Vice President Royal. Thank you for the presentation, Director Campbell. I'm sure we'll get more into this in the March meeting and the first and second reading, but can you just talk a little bit about the timeline of some of these projects and compare it to the distribution of some of the funds through the disbursement of some of the funds as it relates to the projects?
Yeah, I will say something very briefly and then maybe have Director Campbell come up again. We are, as you may remember from the capital budget presentation back in November, we actually have sort of a 30-year layout for some of the projects, but we're really focusing on the first 6 years of that. And so these funds really are on what we feel like, projects that we feel like will be completed or at least started in the first 3 years of that. So from now until 2028. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. Thank you again. That's a very accurate representation. What that 30-year plan shows is the work that needs to get done from now until the end of that 20 or 30-year period, depending on which fund it is. We anticipate each of these projects that are listed, or each of these categories of projects that are listed, to either be under design over these next 3 years or design and start construction. So large projects, which, like the digester, which is tens of millions of dollars, we're looking at it taking the better part of 2 years to do the design of that alone. We would not be starting construction before 2028, but we would need to have all the design funds in place so that we can go after the loan documentation and where they generally require full design documents as well as permitting to be able to get that work done. And we would be coming to you in 2028 for the bond to fulfill some of those larger projects. Some of the smaller projects, whether it's Parks Master Plan implementation, et cetera, some of those we anticipate that we can do the design and actually get construction started, or in some cases actually completed within this 3-year period. And so under the Parks Master Plan implementation, there are several parks that are included in that, which we'll go into detail with next month. And the intention would be to be able to do the design work, get the permitting, and be able to get the construction at least started in several of those parks. For Vision Zero, that's much more of a rolling set of work. It's the more modest interventions such as neck downs and pedestrian interventions, delineators, et cetera, and street markings, as well as some of the initial design for two-way restoration. Those are multi-year projects, but as you know, Vision Zero is targeted to make this huge investment before 2030. The goal is to be able to make the difference by 2030. So in its simplest form, all of these are projects where the funds need, or we fully expect the funds to be needed and expended within these first 3 years. We have been very meticulous in saying in two things. If it's a project that we think is going to be more expensive or that we will not be able to afford the debt service of at this point, can it be deferred? And that's been put into, hopefully, the 2028 bond or on a priority list that may actually have to take it off the long-term list. But most of the things that are on this list are required either by, for functionality and/or for audit purposes. These are requirements, especially in water and wastewater. These are requirements of the utilities and the PUC to be able to make and maintain the water qualities that we deliver. But each of these are within this window of the 3 years.
Thank you, that helps a lot. And just my final follow-up question is, given that these are some of the first 3-year plans, are we confident in our ability to service the whole debt, given the need for additional bonds after the planning or design phase?
I will defer to Tina, and a lot of it has been, what do we believe we have the debt service capacity to take on? We have actually truncated or reduced the scope of many of these projects in anticipation of staying within the limits that we can afford. But it does mean that there are certain items, especially in water and wastewater, where we may have some harder questions as we go into the future, because those are very expensive and are needed irrespective of our ability to incorporate them at this moment. Tina?
Yeah, I think you summarized that very well. I will just add, we have been looking at this, like Steve said, with debt targets both for 2025 and 2028 based on what we can afford. So looking at kind of that future borrowing as well.
Thank you, and I appreciate your follow-up.
Thank you, Councilor Ahmed. Any, Councilor Diaz?
In regards to the items, will this be discussed to the public? I mean, how is this going to be available for the public to ask questions? I mean, you're asking, or you're going to say that it's going to be presented in March, but I think that the community should know this prior to March.
Yeah, I think I think it'll be advertised that it's in March, but yeah.
I would also just say that the Master Parks Plan implementation does include all of the engagement that we did that lays out the plans for many of the parks that are on the list. Vision Zero is similar as part of the active transportation, which has been approved by City Council. And the Vision Zero and active transportation, both of those things. And then as it relates to the other aspects, the Welcome Center funding, and other general maintenance facilities, that is all part of our facilities condition assessment work that DPW has been doing as part of its long-term control plan. So I would say on the major projects for the general fund, the majority of them have been vetted through the public and through this, through the council body. As it relates to water and wastewater, are you asking about those, Councilor Diaz, or just the first?
Well, basically looking at the fact that this is, we're looking at a debt and bond financing needs. That's mostly what I'm looking at. I know some of them are already, we had already voted on that prior to, or we're basically looking at in the future, especially with the EP mandates that we have to follow through with that. But that's a large amount, and that's why I'm asking if that was actually brought up to the community, because I think they should know.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is the open forum for the community. We'll provide all of that in March before it's actually voted on. So there will be opportunities for the community to speak into it as well.
And I think that's also the benefit of the adoption of the Home Rule Charter requiring the long-term capital plan to be laid out for the public so that there is more broad awareness of the types of investments that are required in our water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure to meet state and federal regulation. So that's going to be a much bigger conversation because it is breathtaking, the amount of money that is necessary and to address our infrastructure needs and also the federal and state requirements.
The other, the other thing I wanted to add is that we did, when, I believe it was in the December presentation, the November presentation, we had my deputy directors, and we went into greater detail about the background that supports the reasoning behind what was going on. Why, what kind of replacement are we talking about? What kinds of regulatory things do we have to fulfill, et cetera? So one might actually go back to those. Those are online for review if one wanted to look at more detail and refresh. We've made a conscious effort to try to present this over time and not just spit it all at people all at once. So I'm aware that it's a lot of stuff to try to absorb, and there are documents and YouTube videos online that you can review to see what we were talking about. And yes, it will be, as Tina says, it will be presented again, not at that level of detail, but project by project in the sequence of what is necessary for these next few years to get us from where we are to where we need to be.
My last question. In regards to these projects, do we have anything included that was already added in regards to the grants? Is there any grants that we had added into this? Because I'm just trying to figure out what the difference between the debt and also the minus the grants.
Yeah. So the one that I will point out is the Vision Zero work. So that is, most of that, I believe it's 2.1 of the 2.7 million, is actually for matching funds for the grant that we received for the Safe Streets for All. We're currently unclear if we'll receive all of that federal funding, but since the funding was already awarded to the city, we're continuing to plan that we will receive that funding. So that's why we included the match.
My last question, I'm sorry. I just thought of this just because I know that there's a big question mark on what the federal government is going to be doing. Have you received anything or any notices of grants that may have been already either denied or that they are going forward with it?
I'll say that it's been pretty unclear at this point. We are understanding that anything that was contracted is moving ahead, so that's what we're kind of going with at this point, but we're still trying to kind of determine that, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions or comments from council? From the public? Thank you, Director Campbell, for the presentation, and Director Campbell for the additional commentary. That'll conclude the Finance Committee. We'll move on to the Public Works Committee. Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Vice President Arroyo. Public Works Committee has 4 items on the agenda this evening. However, one of them, well, actually, I'll start with resolution number 10, which is authorizing a cost-sharing agreement with Manheim Township for Marshall Avenue roadway repairs, essentially preparing to add bicycle infrastructure, among other things, and repairing some sections of the Marshall Avenue corridor. And given that the border with the city of Manheim Township is, very kind of chaotic, I don't know what other word to use for it at that area, this agreement is required. Director Campbell, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Yes, thank you very, very much. This is to be able to do surface treatment of roadways that are shared by both Manheim Township and the City of Lancaster on Marshall Avenue between Lidditz Pike and Juliet Avenue. It's approximately 82% of the roadway is owned by the city, about 17+% of the roadway is owned by Manheim Township. In order to get the work done, we need to work cooperatively, and that requires having a resolution that we are working cooperatively. All of the paperwork has already been conducted Manheim Township has already signed on this. Much of this work will be self-performed, and therefore the cost of doing this work is really quite minimal. It's about $50,000 for the city of Lancaster, about $12,000 for the city of for Manheim Township, and much of the work by being self-performed. We're primarily just getting purchasing the materials and coordination. So it's a modest piece of work. The signature for this resolution is the last thing that allows us to go forward so that the work will commence this spring and will be completed by summer.
Thank you very much, Director Campbell. And now I understand, when I read the amounts in the resolution, I don't think it came up in our conversation this morning, but in the resolution, it said something to the effect of like the city is paying 82% of that roughly $60,000 to $70,000 cost. And now you just said that that's the percentage of the roadway the city owns versus township, so I see where that comes from.
Yes.
But I think it's helpful for the public to understand that as well. I'll open it up to comment from the Public Works Committee or full council. Any comment or questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to move Resolution 10-2025 to our full meeting of council on February 11th.
So,
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item on our agenda, my understanding is that we're seeking to table this at this time. Is that correct, Director?
My understanding is that this was to have been taken off the agenda because action had already been taken on this, and unless there was going to be something new in terms of funding or grant changes, there was no need for it to come back before this body.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any action required, parliamentarian? Or
No action required, it's just simply not moving forward.
Okay. With that, I will move to the last two resolutions on the Public Works Committee agenda because I believe they are related. Resolution 16, authorizing an agreement with Railway Auditing and Management Services, and Resolution number 17, authorizing an agreement with Norfolk Southern Railway Company. This is for some of the city's water infrastructure, or actually wastewater, I believe.
It is water.
Water, okay. Happening in Columbia Borough, and it's essentially an administrative step for us to authorize this agreement, but I will let Director Campbell speak to this more.
Yes, very, very good. Thank you very much. Both of these are very much the same, even though they are two different railway entities with whom we are working. In order to finish or do the work related to the large diameter pipe, we have to go under railway right-of-ways. In order to have access to railway right-of-ways, we need to enter into a license agreement with each of those entities, one of them being the Railway Auditing and Management Services, and another one being the Norfolk Southern Railway. Both of these intersections are within Columbia Borough, very close to the Susquehanna River, and these rights-of-way would be, we would be sharing the right-of-way, and we have a license to share the right-of-way so that we can fulfill the large diameter pipe through that section of the infrastructure. These are these peculiar little areas where we have to work with or get around or get through or get under the railway lines. And they have their own authority. What they need and require of us is a resolution that indicates that the city of Lancaster is in agreement that we are licensed, that we are entering into a license agreement with them. And the cost of that license permit is $5,500 for, and I mean it, $5,500 for the Railway Auditing and Management Services piece, and $2,500 for the Norfolk Southern Railway piece.
Thank you very much, Director Campbell. I will open it up to comment, or question or comment from the Public Works Committee or full council. Councilor Glees.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch. Thank you, Director Campbell, for the presentation. What would be the role of the city in those projects? Will the city be involved in ongoing oversight of those projects?
Very, very good question. We still would be the ones in charge of the design and the construction of doing this work. It's just that just like if we were going across your own personal property, we need to have, in this case, a license agreement to use their right-of-way. Otherwise, if it were through your property, we would need an easement from you to be able to have access. And the cost of getting that license agreement is the permitting application fees, which is what is being requested here. But yes, we will be in charge of the design and construction, getting the Penvest loans, getting the work performed to our satisfaction, to our standards, and to meet our requirements.
Sounds good. Thank you. No further questions. Thank you, Councilor Hirsch.
Thank you, Councilor Glees. Any other questions or comments from full council or the committee? Any comments or questions from the public? Hearing none, I'll actually make a motion to move resolutions number 16 and 17 together onto our full council agenda on February 11th.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That concludes the Public Works Committee.
Thank you, Councilor Hirsch. We'll move to the Community Planning Committee. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council Vice. Community Planning has one item on the agenda this evening. Administration Resolution 14, 2025, adopting substantial amendments to the CDBG Consolidated Plan and Annual Action Plan. And I see we have the ladies setting up here, so I'm going to assume you're going to present.
That is a good assumption. Thank you, Councilor Craig. Good evening, Mayor, councilors. I'm pleased to introduce to you this evening Ms. Jen Rummel. She is our new Community Development Administrator, and she started in September with a lot of grant management experience in the nonprofit world, and we were very glad to have her jump into this very extensive, substantial amendment process for the Community Development Block Grants. I wanted to note for you before Jen starts what is in your packet, we are recommending changes to each of the annual action plans for CDBG for 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024 as we near the end of our 5-year consolidated plan. And we included the entire original plans with the highlights in yellow. So the changes are limited, and those are highlighted in yellow, but the whole documents are there, the originals with the changes in yellow. So that is what you have before you this evening. And I will pass it over to Jen.
Thank you. Sorry, hopefully I didn't push the button. All right, thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I'm pleased to speak to you tonight about the Community Development Block Grant Substantial Amendment process. Hopefully my screen will continue to glow up there. Okay. Before we get into the details of the substantial amendment, I wanted to give you a brief overview of the CDBG program. The CDBG program, which is administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, provides annual grants to entitlement states, cities, and...
A minute. Is it possible to speak up a little bit?
Yes,
louder?
yes. Oh, sorry. My apologies. Is this better? Yes? Okay. Thank you. The CDBG program, which is administered by the Administration of Housing and Urban Development, provides annual grants to entitlement states, cities, and counties to help develop viable urban communities in providing funding to support the provisions of decent and affordable housing, the creation of a suitable living environment, and the expansion of economic opportunities, principally to benefit low to moderate income persons. HUD authorizes CDBG funding to be spent on the following eligible community development categories: affordable housing and preservation and production, public infrastructure improvements, public services, economic development, and planning and administration. We use these guidelines for planning programs and allocating our CDBG dollars to support community development in our city. This process follows a 5-year, goal-focused, consolidated planning cycle that provides HUD with a big-picture, unified strategy of the city's main housing and community development goals and planned projects. At the onset of each 5-year planning cycle, the city must submit a consolidated plan outlining its needs, the market conditions, and overall goals of the 5-year plan. Additionally, each year within the 5-year consolidated planning cycle, the city must submit an annual action plan for meeting those goals with the funding approved for the projects based on the grant allocation for each year. The consolidated plan and the annual action plan are shared with the public for comment, sent to City Council for approval and adoption, and then submitted to HUD for their review and approval. Now I'm going to summarize why we came before you with a substantial amendment tonight. A substantial amendment is required in 3 situations: when we make a substantial budgetary change, when we change the purpose, scope, location, or beneficiaries of an activity, or when we reallocate funds from one eligible category to another. The specific details of what constitutes a substantial budgetary change is outlined in our city's 2021 to 2025 Consolidated Action Plan, in our Citizen Participation Plan. The threshold in our city is $50,000 or 50% of the budget, whichever threshold is lower. The sum we are asking to move today is $50,000, which created the need for a substantial amendment, is greater than $50,000, which created the need for tonight's substantial amendment process. Before we review the amendments we are proposing, let's examine the impact of the city's CDBG entitlement funding and anticipated upcoming funding. Since 2021, our budget has been reduced about 5% annually. These changes can be attributed to federal budget changes, shifting in federal funding priorities, changes in populations in terms of number of people, or even concentrations of people who fall below the poverty line. And while we have not yet received our 2025 allocation, if CDBG continues to be funded as it has in the past, and there are no federal funding freezes, we anticipate our funding will be about $1.378 million, with our program revenue included, adjusted to $1.403 million. Our team is watching for daily updates and will continue to adjust spending as needed in this new context. The City of Lancaster identified 4 priority community goals during the community engagement portion of our 2021 to 2025 consolidated plan. Despite small shifts in our annual funding, we were able to continue to fund each of those 4 major priorities over the last 5 years with CDBG entitlement funds. Therefore, our 5-year consolidated plan is not being amended as we continue to be in line with those 4 major goals. I can't tell if everyone in the back is able to see, so I'm going to go over the categories briefly. Maintain quality affordable housing is at large red, 42%. Increase affordable housing opportunities is the lower gray at 16%. Promote neighborhood quality of life is, I guess, kind of a darker gray or lighter gray at 26%, and that's 1% slice there is expand economic opportunities. The 15% is not listed in one of our 4 major categories, but that is floor planning and administration. If you look at the pie chart, you can see more than half, so the 16 plus the 42%, 58% of our investment is in increasing quality affordable housing opportunities and maintaining quality affordable housing opportunities. Some of the funding activities in certain are capped in certain percentages from our overall funding. These caps limit our ability to carry funding over year to year, which is the primary reason that we have brought a substantial amendment to you tonight. First, let's discuss the items that we are proposing an increase in funding. Recently, the City of Lancaster received new grants, which require a total of $199,000 in matching funds from CDBG. First, $70,000 we're requesting towards the new match for a $3 million Healthy Homes Program grant. The remaining $129,000 we are requesting towards the match for a new $7.75 million Lead Hazard Reduction Program grant. We're also requesting the reallocation of $75,000 to support the Bay Street Community Garden Project. This money was primarily allocated from the unspent allocation for the Lancaster Rec HVAC Center at their old building, which is now not needed. We are pleased to continue to partner with the Lancaster Rec Center for this new community garden activity. Last, we are looking to reallocate $305,210 for affordable housing solutions. The need for maintaining and increasing affordable housing continues to be a significant concern in the City of Lancaster. The city plans to increase its investment in affordable housing through a competitive process seeking eligible projects that may include activities such as construction of new housing, homeownership assistance, and acquisition and/or rehab of existing housing for the purposes of increasing affordable housing for low and moderate income individuals. Most of the decreases you see here are due to caps on administrative and public service dollars. If we do not spend in these categories, we cannot carry them over to the next year because caps apply every year. If there are staffing vacancies, those monies must be reallocated into uncapped categories. We are requesting to move $54,750 from the Dunn Program Manager position. Due to staffing vacancy in 2024, the funds were not spent down in this category. We have funded this position again in 2025 if the CDBG allocation is received as expected. We are requesting to move $159,654 from the Police Social Work Program. In addition to staffing vacancies and spending caps, some of the police social work hours that were anticipated to be charged to the Police Social Work Program were not eligible due to geographic restrictions. For example, the downtown area is excluded geographically. Third, we are requesting to move $129,450 from building code enforcement. These dollars were originally allocated during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, building code revenues increased to a point where CDBG funding was no longer required to support the program. And last, we are requesting to move $166,134 from planning and administration, which is entirely due to staffing vacancies and caps on funding. In summary, the total number of dollars we are seeking to reallocate over this 5-year allocation plan is $584,987 of the $7.779 million entitlement allocation, or approximately 14%. Approximately 7.519%. Should the 2025 allocation become less certain, we will revisit City Council as needed to examine our options. So a reminder for those who do not have the entire substantial amendment plans in front of them, we have a hard copy available at City Hall. We have digital copies that are available on our website, and public comments will be open until March 3rd. I wanted to give some quick overview of some upcoming dates we're anticipating. In early March, we will be presenting our Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, our CAPER, where we summarize the outcomes and expenditures of the CDBG funds from the previous year. In June, we expect that we will be presenting our 2025 Annual Action Plan, a summary of our key goals and objectives for the 2025 CDBG entitlement, and along with a list of metrics of how we plan to measure those objectives. And last, as you know, 2025 is the last year in our 2021 to 2025 consolidated plan. So between April and August of this year, we're going to be entering the citizen participation portion of our 2026 to 2030 consolidated plan. And we're looking forward to working with all of you, our community members, local nonprofits, local champions, and our most vulnerable population in planning for our city's future. So thank you for the opportunity to present, and we are pleased to take any questions you may have about our proposed approach.
Thank you, ladies, for your presentation. I'll open this up to the committee for questions and full council.
Just a comment. Just want to thank the city for continuing to prioritize housing and affordable housing and home repair, and continuing to push every dollar that we can towards that. It's important, so.
Thank you, Councilor Craig, and thank you guys for the presentation. Just a question about some of the moves that were made due to staffing levels not being filled, such as Department of Neighborhood Engagement or, the City Program Administration. In future plans, if these positions are restaffed, will we go after those dollars to cover, those positions? Because I do think, and I think that some of these positions are very popular, such as the Department of Neighborhood Engagement or, small business development. And I just wanted to know what the plans were, to try to get those positions refilled and how the CDBG grants could help that.
Can we take that? Yes, thanks for the question. That's a good question. Through these moves, these are addressing past vacancies, not vacancies that are coming up or positions that are being cut. And so through the consolidated planning process, those were priority areas and priority staffing, and so those remain consistent. The issue has more been that when there has been a vacancy for a considerable amount of time in the prior year, we're not able to use that funding for that same position the next year because of caps on funding. And so that position, those positions have been continued to be funded in the next year's in the same CDBG, with the same CDBG allocation.
Thank you. And then in regards to the police social work program of being geographically only for or not being allowed in the downtown investment area, can you just expand on that and just kind of, if you could just kind of re-explain the police social work aspect of it?
Sure. So CDBG, one of the main components is to make sure that we are spending in low to moderate census tracts or with low to moderate income individuals. And we have to choose one or the other of these methodologies to ensure that we're serving low and moderate income individuals with each and every activity that we do. In the case of police social worker, we chose to allocate these funds based on geographic area so that if the police social workers are responding in low to moderate income census tracts, primarily in the southern part of the city, those are the activities that are covered by the police social worker. So when they are responding in census tracts that are not geographically low, primarily low or moderate income individuals, then their time cannot be covered by CDBG. So this was not, we maybe anticipated more of their time being covered initially, but we have not cut those positions, just only a portion could be funded with the CDBG funds.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with you guys on the engagement around the 2026 to 2030 plan.
Wonderful.
Councilor Craig? Excuse me, just a quick comment. I'll abstain from voting on this item just because the organization that I work for, Assets, is listed as an organization in the action plan, so I'll abstain from voting.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions from council as a whole?
If I may, Councilor Craig. In regards to the funding for the CBDG and housing, is is that including some of the shelters? Does any of that funding go to any of the local shelters that we have?
Good question. You want me to take it?
The only funding that I saw that went to the shelters was from 2021. That was part of the ESG allocation.
So homeless shelters and service for homeless individuals is funded through the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG funding, for which we received entitlement funds in 2021, but not since. And those same activities are not eligible through CDBG funding because they are funded with federal entitlement ESG funding. So CDBG cannot fund shelter activities or activities for the homeless.
But isn't that considered someone that is unhoused? That needs housing?
Yes, so someone who is unhoused would definitely need housing. The Affordable Housing Development Solutions is for the construction of new housing or the rehabilitation of affordable housing. So it's more about the infrastructure of the housing than it is about service to that particular individual. And that is in the nuance of what is allowable or unallowable in the federal regulations.
And how many houses are actually listed for the CBD dollars to repair? Do you have a stock number?
How many we have funded with CDBG?
How many are going to be funded and the repairs being done? Is there a stock number, a number of houses or apartments?
That's a good question. Primarily with CDBG, we have funded the rehabilitation of affordable housing for home ownership and rental through Partners with Purpose, which was formerly part of Lancaster City Housing Authority, and also with SACA, who they renovate homes and then sell them to homeowners. So we have funded those two programs, those two partners with this funding previously, and the subsidies in recent years have been extensive for each and every rehabbed house because of the conditions, many times blighted or in extremely poor condition. And so even the $300,000 now that we are allocating to this, it is but a drop in the bucket for what is needed for affordable housing in this category. But thank you, Councilor Hirsch, as well, for pointing out every dollar we could that we didn't need in other categories, we funneled back into that affordable housing. But our average cost, sometimes they're $150,000 to $200,000 per unit for rehab of existing housing. So it's expensive.
So you're looking at probably repairing, what, 3 houses?
With that particular money, depends on the condition of the house, but I would say no more than 3 with that additional allocation. But over the course of the all the action plan and all the money, we allocated $1,057,000, and we've already done, I want to say 9 to 10 properties with the money that we've already allocated into that program. So we will come back next month with the CAPER for what we accomplished in 2024, and we'll have all the cumulative totals there. But with that $1 million, that's what we've already done with those dollars so far in the consolidated plan.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions from the public? Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Geiser, and I apologize, I forgot your name already.
Jen Rummel.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jen Rummel.
Thank you for having us, and we look forward to presenting to you our accomplishments next month. It will be more interesting and exciting than simple administrative task of reallocating dollars. So we look forward to that next month. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll make a motion to move this to full council on the 11th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Council Vice, that concludes community planning.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. We will now move to the Committee of the Whole. We have 2 agenda items for this evening. First is Council Resolution Number 9, 2025, recognizing Black History Month. I'll turn it over to Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Council Vice. it is February, the shortest month of the year, and here we are at Black History Month again. So I'm going to first ask, is there anybody here that would like to speak to the resolution afterwards? Then I will proceed in reading the resolution into record. The City Council Resolution Number 9, 2025, introduced by me, Councilor Craig, adopted by Council, a resolution of the Council of the City of Lancaster designating February 2025 as Black History Month in the City of Lancaster and recognizing resistance to injustice by African Americans throughout Lancaster's history. Whereas since 1976, February has been recognized in the United States as Black History Month, and national attention has been focused on the history of African Americans, the Civil Rights Movement, and efforts to advance the place of African Americans in society. And whereas the theme of the 2025 National Recognition of Black History Month is African Americans and labor. And whereas all types of work, volunteer, involuntary, skilled, unskilled, has been foundationally to the experience of Black people in the United States. And whereas early Black residents of Lancaster were enslaved here and labored for others, such as those who built and operated General Edward Hand's Rockford Estate. And whereas in and by the mid-19th century, free Blacks had become entrepreneurs profiting from their own labor, such as lumber merchants William Whipper and Stephen Smith and Lydia Hamilton Smith, who owned rental properties in Lancaster and Washington, D.C., and were all involved in the Underground Railroad. And whereas members of the Lancaster's Black community and their white allies organized to resist unfair practices in unemployment, including Abraham Polite, Marianne Gibson Brubaker, and Laura Carter, who organized the Lancaster branch of the NAACP in 1923. And in the summer of 1963, the NAACP organized protests of downtown Lancaster's department stores over discriminatory hiring practice because Black employees at those stores were relegated to jobs as janitors and elevator operators. And whereas other leaders of the Lancaster branch of the NAACP, including the Reverend Philip Aku, Robert A. Cooper, Ashley S. Dudley, Jr., the Reverend Alexander Stephens, Kenneth Boast, and Reverend Ernest Christian, and Kenneth Abernathy, Betty Tompkins, publicity secretary of the NAACP, and Ruby Cook Bohe Payne, who served for nearly 30 years as the leader of Crispus Attucks Center. And whereas Black leaders labored in academia and created a document Black history in Lancaster, including Frederick Reed, the first Black male teacher in the school district of Lancaster, and alumni of Franklin Marshall College, Hazel I. Jackson, who spent Friday afternoons in the 1950s outside the office of the school district of Lancaster superintendent before being hired as the district's first Black female teacher in 1961, and founded the Black Cultural Celebration at Millersville University in 1970. Dr. Rita Smith Waddell, who founded the African American Studies program at Millersville, and Dr. Leroy Hopkins, who through his research, lectures, and articles in the Journal of Lancaster County's Historical Society, has elevated Black history of Lancaster, and schools in Lancaster were later renamed in honor of Hazel I. Jackson and Dr. Rita Smith Waddell. Whereas Bethel African American Episcopal Church, founded in 1817 and incorporated in 1848, and other religious congregations of predominantly Black members have provided spiritual, social, and civic support to Lancastrians and before the Civil War to Black freedom seekers traveling through Lancaster under the protection of the Underground Railroad network. Whereas Henry Norwood Barney Ewell, nationally and international champion in track events and winner of 1 gold medal and 2 silver medals in the 1948 Olympics, was recognized by the city of Lancaster in the naming of Ewell Plaza. Whereas Dr. Carter Woodson, an historian who earned a PhD degree from Harvard University and later taught at Howard University, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915. After being barred from the American Historical Association, and in 1926 founded his Black History Week, the origins of Black History Month, celebrated annually in February. And whereas Lancaster has long been a place of welcome for those seeking religious liberties, and has sought to live up to the principle of liberty for all, and must continue to strive to reach that goal. And now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of Lancaster, City of Lancaster, that during this Black History Month and every month, City Council calls on all Lancastrians and to respect and honor the sacrifice of those who have struggles for the rights of African American for justice and equality. There you go. That was rather long. But that is our Black History Resolution. It is long, and I look forward to reading it every year, but I'm about to lose my voice. So that concludes that.
Thank you, Councilor Craig, and I appreciate you reading the resolution. Any questions or comments from full council? From the public? With that, I'll motion to move resolution number 9, 2025 to full council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item on the agenda is the administration resolution number 11, 2025, which is authorizing a flag raising at City Hall to mark Pride Month. This resolution was brought to us through an application by the Lancaster Pride Association, which has submitted its application to the City of Lancaster in a timely manner that is requesting that the Pride flag be flown at City Hall on June 2nd, 2025, with a backup date of June 3rd, 2025, in case of inclement weather. Any questions or comments from full council? Any from the public? With that, I'll motion to move administration resolution number 11, 2025 to full council.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our committee of the whole. We'll now move to the clerk's report. Mr. Harris, I believe you submitted that to us in writing.
I did, yes.
Great. I'll ask council to review the written report. With that, I will conclude city council committee.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.